Hello everyone, my name is Nikhil. Today I am going to take you through AWX. As some of you would know, AWX provides a web-based user interface, a REST API, and a task engine built on top of Ansible. So over here, this is a AWX which is running locally on my Docker container, and now I will log into this using my admin account, which I have created while installing AWX. And this is how the dashboard of AWX looks like. Over here you would see some numbers. These are the total number of hosts that I am managing, or the remote nodes which I am managing via AWX. These are the number of hosts on which my playbooks have failed. As you can see, I have not run a lot of jobs over here, that's why it says 0. These are the total number of inventories that I have. These are the sinks, inventory sinks, which have failed for dynamic inventories. These are the total number of projects. We'll be going in details of what is a project later in the session. And these are the total number of project sinks which have failed. Over here you would see the historical job runs that I have done over the last 1 month. As you can see, I have recently installed this AWX. That's why you see a few jobs over last few days. If I click this I, which is information, that will give you what AWX version I am running. This is AWX 12 and this is Ansible 2. This is using Ansible 2.9.9. Over here you would see a logout button. This will log you out from the AWX, and this gives you what user is logged in. Over here on the left hand side you would see the main menu of AWX. Jobs would just give you all the historical job runs that have happened on AWX. Schedules gives you all the scheduled jobs which are present on AWX. By default it has 4 management jobs which are scheduled. My view just gives you a different view of the jobs page. It gives you a view wherein you can see all the jobs which are run by you. Though over here you see my jobs, and over here you see all jobs. Templates. So we'll go in details of templates, credentials, projects, inventories in the later section of the session. But these are some of the options available on the main menu of Ansible of AWX. Organization. This is like the topmost object of AWX, wherein you define one organization, and then organization consists of user, teams, inventories, projects, job templates, and admins. Users, they are just part of organizations or teams. Right now you just see one user over here. Teams is just a subset, so you can have multiple teams in organization. Just think of like dev team, QA team, or our testing team in organization. Credential types, notification, management jobs, instance groups, applications. These are some really advanced concepts of AWX which we will be covering in different session. So right now let's talk about the one that I was talking about: templates, credentials, projects, and inventories. All right, so let's look at some of the objects over here: templates, credentials, projects, inventories. Before I go into templates, let's actually move from bottom to up. Let's go to inventories first. Basically, inventory is a collection of hosts against which job may be launched. So think about the inventories that you create on command line, right? When you use Ansible playbook command, you give a -i and then you give an inventory name, and that inventory is just the collection of all the remote nodes that you want to manage via Ansible. And then in that inventory you create groups, you create group vars, you create inventory vars. Similarly on AWX you can do the same. It's just that it is on UI. So right now over here you would see I have 2 inventories. This is a demo inventory which gets created by default when you install AWX. AWS inventory is an inventory which is a dynamic inventory which I created. So there are multiple type of different inventories that you create on AWX. It could be a dynamic inventory, It could be a static inventory, like you add few hosts manually into that inventory. When I say dynamic inventory, there could be different type of dynamic inventories, right? So over here, this is AWX dynamic inventory. So over here you would see the name, the organization, and then you see a few tabs over here, right? So I'll go into the sources tab. This is where you define the source of your dynamic inventory. Right now I already have a AWS source, so if I click on that source, over here you see the name, you see the source. These are the different dynamic inventory sources that you can have on AWX. So right now I am using Amazon, but you can have GCE, you can have Azure, you can have VMware, Red Hat Satellite, CloudForms, OpenStack, Rev, Tower, or you can write your own custom script, which would be a script managed by you. So right now I'm using Amazon EC2. As soon as I choose Amazon EC2, it gives me an option to add a credential. So in order to get the VMs or the host from Amazon, I need to use my AWS credential, which will go into this credential section. So I've already created that credential. I'll show you that as well, but I've already created that, and then I've added it over here. Then you can choose which region that you want to get the host from. You could do all, so it will go on all the regions of AWS, or if you want, you can choose specific regions. I've chosen Singapore. Instance filter is just to filter the instances that you want to pull from AWS. There is a possibility that you don't want all the hosts to be pulled, and just some hosts based on some tags or some names. So you can filter based on those. You can click on this question icon and see some examples over here. I'm not using those filters. Group by is same. You want to group by based on some of the parameters or some of the values which are available for each host. Verbosity is just the verbosity of the inventory sync which is going to run. This is similar to the -VV option that you do on command line. I'm using the debug verbosity, and then over here you see few options. Overwrite is to overwrite the inventory every time you run the sync. So if there is any host which is deleted on the AWS, if you click on overwrite, it will get deleted on the tower as well when you run the inventory sync. Overwrite variables is to overwrite any host vars. If you make any changes on the AWS side, those will get fetched on the AWX as well when you do the update. An update on launch is to make sure that this inventory is updated before the job template is run. So on job template, you would choose the inventory, and when you run the job template, it will make sure that it first updates the inventory and then run the job template. Cache timeout is just to tell when do you do the update. So if you say for example, you gave it 60 over here, and you run an inventory sync now, and then you run another inventory sync within the 30 seconds. It is not going to do another inventory update basically. So this cache timeout only comes into picture when you do update on launch. So for example, like I mentioned, if you run a job template and then you run another job template within that cache timeout, another inventory sync will not happen. Source variable is just to give some metadata before you run the inventory sync. You can click on this question mark and go in details of those examples as well. So right now I already have this inventory created, so inventory source created and the inventory as well. Notification schedules, again, very advanced concepts. We can go there. We can go on those in later sessions. So right now over here you see three options. One is edit, one is start the sync process, and one is delete the source. If I click on start the sync process, this will sync this inventory and fetch me all the latest hosts from AWS which are running in the Singapore region. Over here you see that cloud icon is blinking. That means the inventory sync is running. If I go and click over here, you would see it's trying to run the inventory sync, and let it run. All right, now let's look into the next object, which is projects. A project basically on AWS is a logical collection of Ansible playbooks. So you can write different playbooks and put them into one place, which will be project. Project can be of two types. One would be a manual project and the other would be a dynamic project. A manual project is a project which you create on the file system manually. You create a directory and then within that directory you put all your playbooks. That directory needs to be created into where live AWX projects on the file system of Tower. That is a manual project. And the other is a dynamic project. Dynamic project is where you use Git or Subversion or Mercurial, where you already have your playbooks and then you download them on AWX. So that's a dynamic project. So I will create a dynamic project for you over here. So over here you see a plus icon, right? So I'll just click plus. I will give a name of the project. So let's say Ansible test project. Then you give it a organization. Since I only have one organization, the default is pre-populated. So over here I'll choose the SCM type. So like I said, it could be manual or it could be dynamic project, like using Git, Mercurial, Subversion, Red Hat Insights. So I'm going to use Git. As soon as I choose Git, it is going to ask me for the SCM URL, which is the project URL for me. So I'm going to go, so this is a repository that I have got, which has all the test playbooks, which is forked from Ansible test playbooks. I will copy the Git path from here and I will paste it over here. Since this is a public repo, I don't need a SCM credential. But if it's a private repo, you need to give it a SCM credential, which again I'll go in details when I talk about credentials, the different type of credentials. And then once I can, over here you would see different options again. So clean is to clean the project before it updates it. So if there are any manual changes on the file system, it will clean that. Delete on update is it will delete the project before updating it. Update revision on launch is to update the project before running the job template. So if you remember on the inventories, I mentioned there was an update on launch. That was to update the inventory before the job template is launched. Similarly on the project, we have update revision on launch, which will update the project before running the job template. Allow branch override. This is just to override the branch when you run the job template. So if you click on this option, it will give you an option to change the branch in the job template. So I'm going to uncheck it for now. Save this. Once I save this, this is automatically going to run a SCM update and fetch the project from Git. So right now it's doing it. If I click on this blinking icon, it will say update project using Git. It has done it, and it has, it has got the project and all the playbooks in that project on the Tower file system now. So the project update is done. So this is and this project now has all the playbooks that I want to use. If I go on file system, I could have shown you. Let me see if I can do that. All right, so let's see when I did that update on that project, when it fetched things from Git, where did it go? So right now I'm on my command line. So I'm going to do a docker ps just to see all the containers that are running. So over here you would see these are the 4 containers that are running. I'm going to go into AWX task. So I'll say docker exec, and then I will give the name of the container and bash. So right now I am into this container. Now I'll go into cd where live AWX projects. This is where all my projects are. So over here you would see it has already created this directory. So this is the project which I created on UI, and now I'm cding it into it. And then if I do ls, it has all the playbooks which were there on Git. So it has downloaded all the playbooks, and now these are available for me to use in the job template. So let's go back to the AWX. So this is what the projects are. So let's now talk about credentials. Credentials are utilized by AWX for authentication, to the remote nodes which you are trying to manage. So those will be like SSH credentials. Those are called as machine credentials in AWX. These can be credentials which will be utilized for synchronization with inventory sources. Like I mentioned in the inventory section, there were different type of dynamic inventories: EC2, VMware, Azure, GCE. Each of them have their own credentials. So those credentials can be created over here. Like you see, I already have a AWS credential, which is type of AWS Web Services, but you can create the others as well. And these will be the credentials wherein you will give the credentials for Git, SVN, or Mercurial, or any other project source that you have. So those credentials will also come here. So in the project section, if you remember, there was option to choose the SCM credential. So that credential will be created over here. So if I click on this plus icon over here, first I have to give the name of the credential. Let's say, for example, test. The organization would be default. Over here you would choose the type of credential, and now as soon as I click search, you would see all the different type of credentials. So this is AWS, this is Ansible Tower. If you want to fetch things from a different Ansible Tower cluster, you can use this credential. Then there are few CyberArk credentials which are used for secrets, which is an advanced feature which will go in the other sessions. If I go on the second page, you will see GCE, HashiCorp is again the secrets. If I go on the third page, this is the machine credential which I was talking about. This is the SSH credential. Microsoft Azure is for getting things from Azure. Network is for any network device that you want to manage via AWS. So that goes into network credential. OpenShift Kubernetes token. This is again more of an advanced feature which we'll cover in the other videos. These are some other, the dynamic inventory type of credentials that you can use. The VMware is over here as well. So if I choose, say, for example, Git. So actually, let's not use the token. So let's say I want to use the Git credential, right? So I will go here and say source, and then use source control, and then I will give the username and my password. So this will be my Git credential. I can use the private key as well if I use the private key, but since I'm using password, I'll just save the password. One good thing about AWX is anything that you save, which is a password type, it gets encrypted as soon as you save it. So now I can't even see this. It's encrypted, so that's a good thing. Anybody has access to AWX, they'll not be able to see your passwords or the keys. So now I've created a credential which is of Git type. If I go back to the credential, there are some other credentials which I've created. This EC2 user over here, you see, is a machine credential. So this is a SSH credential. If I click on that, you would see it has a username, and then it has a private key which is again encrypted. So this credential is being used to SSH to any VM running on AWS. It's using the EC2 user, and it's using this private key. Similarly, like I mentioned, AWS credential as well. This credential is used for fetching the host from AWS. So this is my access key which it uses, and then again secret key is encrypted. Like you saw in the drop down when we were creating a credential, there are different type of credentials that you can use. So this is credential. All right, so let's now talk about job templates. So in the previous sections, we have already created an inventory, we have created a project, we have created credentials as well, and all of these are now going to be used when we create the job template. So let's actually create a new job template, right? I'll click on this plus icon over here. You would see it gives me two options. One is job template, one is workflow job template. Workflow job template is something which is little advanced, and we will talk about it in some other videos. So for now, let's choose job template. As soon as I click job template, I get this page where I have to give all the metadata related to this job template. Name, so let's give it a name, test thing, and then description is something which is optional. If you want to give it, you can give it or you can skip it. I'm just going to give a test wing description. Job type, there are two type of job types that you can run. One is run and the other is check. Check is more or less what you get on the command line as well with the check mode, wherein if you run a playbook, it doesn't do any actual changes, but it just tells you what what it's going to do. So that is similar to what you have at check mode. So you can use check or you can use run. So I'm going to use run for now. Inventory, this is where I would target my remote nodes. So these are the remote nodes that I want to manage. I will choose the inventory which I created in the previous sections. So I'm just going to choose AWS, which is my dynamic inventory from Amazon. Then in the projects, again, this is the same thing which I created in the previous section. So I'm going to use the Ansible test project over here. And as soon as I choose the Ansible test project, it gives me an option of choosing the playbooks, because I can have different playbooks in the project. So if I click this, I will see all the playbooks which are part of this project and can be run via this job template. So there are loads of playbooks. So I'm going to choose something which is very simple, like for example ping.yaml. This playbook does the ping on all the hosts which are part of this AWS inventory. Now in order to do the ping, I have to SSH to that in a remote node, right? And for me to SSH, I have to use a machine credential. So I'm going to use the EC2 user, which is a machine credential. This is the user I'm going to use for SSH. Like you probably would have remembered, right? I created this credential in the previous section where I gave the username in the private key. So now I've given the EC2 user as the machine credential. Now the next section you see is forks. Forks is similar to what you get on the command line. This is just the number of parallel Ansible playbooks Ansible playbook commands that will run when you run the playbook. So by default it uses 0 over here. That means there will be 5 forks in the background. That is the default on AWX. But I can change it to 10, 20 depending on my use case and the resources that I have. Limit, this is similar to what you have on command line again, the -- limit option, where you can, let's say for example in this AWS inventory I have 5 hosts and I just want to limit this playbook to a particular host. So I can put that value or the host name or the IP address in the limit over here, and it will only run on that particular host. You can also give the group names. Verbosity, this is similar to what you have on command line with -v, -vv, -vvv. So similarly over here you have 5 different labels of verbosity. I'm just going to use like the normal verbosity for now, or I can actually use debug as well. Job tags, this is similar to what you have on command line again, the -- tags option, wherein it will only run the tasks which matches this tag. So you can tag your task and then give the tags over here to run only those tasks which are matching this tag. Skip tag is just the opposite of this job tag. These will be the tags which will be skipped. So any task which will match this tag will get skipped in the playbook. Labels, this is just for a better representation of your job template. It helps you in searching your job templates, so you can label them and then you can use those labels to search the job templates. Instance groups and job slicing, these are the two options which are little advanced. We are not covering this in this video, but we will definitely cover them in the later videos which will be a little more advanced. Timeout, this is to tell when should Ansible tower timeout on this job template. So for example, if I give it 30, it will, so if this job template runs for more than 30 seconds, it will just time out. It will fail the job and come out. By default this is 0, that means no timeout, it's infinite. So I'll keep it 0 for now. And all these options over here that you see, these are again little advanced options. I'm not going to go in detail of those yet. We can cover them in like, you know, a different video. But I want to talk about this enable concurrent jobs. So by default, when you run a job template on Ansible Tower, it runs as a job, of course. But if you run, you know, 2 invocations of the same job template, one after the other, the second invocation always goes into pending if the first invocation is still running. But if you don't want that, you can enable this option. With this option, you know, 2 or more than 2 invocations of the same job template can run at the same time. So if you want to do that, you would have to, you know, make sure you enable the job concurrent jobs. So I'm going to keep it disabled for now. I will save this. As soon as I save the job template, I get an option to launch this. As soon as I launch this, this will run this playbook ping.yaml on all the remote nodes which are part of this AWS inventory. This playbook just does a simple ping, you know, nothing else. So let's run this job. And now this will, you know, so over here you see all the metadata. You know, it says right now it's in pending, and this is the job template, this is the job type run, who launched this job, what inventory is it using, what is the project, what is the playbook. Now it's running like you see over here, and it's doing ping on all those remote nodes. You would see, you know, those pong messages over here. So now it has, you know, done a ping on all these 6 nodes in the AWS inventory. It has got a pong output, and the job is successful. You can see the start time and the finish time as well over here. So and this is where you see the standard output. This is similar to what you get on the command line, right? The output of your playbook, but it's there here on the AWX. Now if I go to the job section over here, you would see all the historical jobs that I have run on this AWX instance. So this gives you the history as well. So I can go in on any, you know, previous jobs that I have run and check the output. So this is an inventory sync which ran for this AWS inventory, and this shows all the instances that it got. So a very good feature of AWX is history, right? It preserves all the jobs for you and the output for those jobs. So at any point in time, if you want to go back and see output for the job, you can do that. Now I can see the output of this job. This is the same ping job. I can go and check the output of, you know, this job as well. This is a SCM update. So the history is there. You don't have to worry about, you know, saving your job outputs to a text file and then, you know, managing those text files. AWX does it for you. So this is a job template. Now this is how you create one job template, you know, give it all the metadata required for it, and then that is how you run it, which is what I wanted to show in this, you know, basic video.